Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in. This video is my breakdown to a concept I'm titling Hip Hop Geometry, a visual aid to the resonance potential of hip hop culture. I'm wanting to do this because I feel that we as hip hoppers are expanding within and throughout and touching upon a deeper aspect of our experience within reality. The more people I meet, the more people I find are digging into their spiritual self via this culture. And so I would like to lay some framework for perhaps future philosophy / theology and spiritual development within the concepts of our culture of hip hop. And so we begin here with an 8x8 square. This measurement of 8 can be in any format. Imagine, if you will, 8 partitions, moments, or counts. And if you wish to draw it, 8 centimeters. The reason it being 8 is because 8 is the key to the expansion of a moment to a conversation. And because we've chosen hip hop as our form of expression within this time and place, we will continue with the thought of 8 being the measurement of time via a rhythm. I'll go a bit deeper into this now. The count of 8 in a musical sense is where the rhythm has grown to such an extent that a phrase has been formed. For example, if there's just one count, the kick drum heard on its own is just a sound. Whereas a 2 count, a kick followed by a snare, forms a moment. It is enough of a pattern to help the mind register it as something to note or be aware of. And so, this moment grows to a 4 count, retaining balance by doubling itself just as cells grow in an organism. This 4 count has grown from a moment to a sequence due to the noticeable sense of pattern. And so this pattern conjures a sense of something to connect to. It sets a scene. It's almost like this poses you a question. This is the rhythm. What are you going to do with it? This is life. What are you going to do with it? And so we engage with this pattern, almost sensing the sign of creative intelligence within it. And our first steps to a rhythmic conversation can become. And so we manifest our first rhythmic sentence. We have to extend a 4 count to an 8, doubling again, which gives birth to an event or phrase. And so within this event, you find a time and space that encourages your expression or your conversation with the creative force you are now connecting to. So now I hope I have established why the measurement of 8 is of significance. It is basically where a sound has evolved enough through moment to pattern to phrase to make the initial steps to rhythmic communication. And it's this communication via rhythm which is key to our culture. And in these drums they heard the pulse of hip hop, the yet incubating infant that was about to be born. And so as the drums spoke louder and longer, and filled the impoverished Bronx with creative nourishment, focus and empowerment, hip-hop was born. It grew to a culture of 4 elements, hence the square, with each corner representing the pillar of said elements: DJing, breaking, MCing, and graffiti art. This brings us nicely to our first pillar of the foundation square, DJing, a major element of hip-hop, the person who selects the music and later via the creative power of hip-hop consciousness began to sample and extend the breaks within records via the art of doubling. This was fundamental to the birthing of hip-hop's energy state and vibrational quality. The breakdown of records which a DJ and crowd were after was where the drum was at its most powerful, or where the groove and rhythm was at its peak. Imagine, if you will, this beat or breakdown filled to the brim with raw potential sound energy or vibe. And as the DJ learnt to harness this and extend the breakdowns via doubling, the energy and power was maintained and could exist for as long as was desired or needed. This in turn allowed for the other main elements of hip-hop culture to really evolve and take root. These being breaking, MCing and graffiti art. Graffiti art being the harder to understand because it is not directly responding to music. But if you study the shapes of dances, especially breaking, you'll notice similarities in the angles, cuts and flows visually expressed by both art forms. These art forms in a way harness and embody that expressive power found within the drums or the breakdowns. And with these extended breakdowns, the MC began to start rapping more. The concepts evolved, and the evolution of hip-hop culture began. Before I move on though, I'd like to go back to 8. 8 is also the symbol for infinity when flipped on its side. So when flipping your perspective on 8, you can see the infinite potential of a cyclical loop. Is this not what the early pioneers did to hip-hop's primary tool, the turntables? DJs such as Kool Herc and Grandmaster Flash flipped their perspective on the potential use of a setup or use of turntables and saw the cyclical nature and the looping potential, giving birth to the break, which then empowered the development of hip hop culture. With this cultural backbone in place, our posture or sense of being began to form, and thus hip hop formed its own cultural values, which were peace, love, unity, and safely having fun. Our foundation square doubles itself, and here we have the formation of hip hop's temple. And we're quickly going to look into the numerical value of the temple via the art of numerology. Now, numerology is a way of discussing emotional qualities within a creative universe, and they do this via the breakdown of such mathematical structures and patterns inherent within an ordered and balanced composition, the composition being this reality. And so going back to our temple, we look at the value of one square, this being 32, which is 8 times 4. 32 values spontaneity and creativity. It embodies a sense of joy and positivity towards life and values social interaction. The core essence of 32 is expression of personal freedom. To me, this sums up hip-hop. It's an amazing coincidence how this square, this foundation form, embodies the principles that we find inherently embodied within culture. It is exactly what drove hip-hop to become. It is why we love to do what we do. And then adding both squares together gives 64. This number is stated to represent self-determination and actions that benefit the family. It is a number that enjoys exploring new ideas and new ways of doing things. 64 is about being self-sufficient and visualizing and achieving self-determined goals. It needs no acknowledgement or praise. It is satisfied just doing what it does. And to me, this also sums up the beautiful evolutionary path that hip-hop took. The strength and self-determination one needed to discover, to pioneer new art forms, new ways of expression, new ways of fulfilling one's ultimate worth, ultimate inner expression, ultimate need to become more than what we were told we were, or more than they were ever given credit for. Just imagine putting yourself in that situation back in the Bronx in the 70s. They had to break down that mental wall that was built around them. And they found the power and the support they needed within the culture, within the music. This energy that tuned in with their heart's needs. And hip-hop healed, it empowered, it gave purpose, it gave direction. It brought focus to people who were unfocused. It gave them a sense of belonging. It was their own nation. We have a nation that is now worldwide. And so this nation has a temple, a space that can be filled with a collective consciousness, a space where a sense of a shared reality can become formed, where a culture can develop its own language, ideas, dreams, needs and purpose. And seeing as we are beings of the universe, this means the universal mind is now inherently filling this space. So we take it to the next step, and that is to know that we are all created from universal consciousness. And so through everything and everyone, we may connect to such an awareness and again develop this aspect of our nature via our chosen expression of self. The culture helped people adjust their perspectives on each other. It brought value and empowerment to people who were not valued and powerless. It gave hope and home to people who were on their last legs. It helped strengthen the community who were left to tear themselves apart. The temple of hip-hop began. It began its healing and education. And these lessons flourished from within the culture and so began to ripple into the world, immediately having huge impacts upon global society, ultimately affecting the music industry, fashion, economics, trade, grassroots and independent organizations and events, views on art, dance, language, expression, education, politics, socio-economics, community, and values and ideals. And now we have the spheres of hip-hop, where each pillar expands and interacts with the world outside of hip-hop as well as internally. The meanings and realms of the spheres of hip-hop engage with the wider life, rippling its effects outwards, but at the same time receiving inspiration in return. Hip-hop in a way has its own cell membrane, filtering the nutrients and outside influences. Similar to how a DJ digs for the best breaks, hip-hop searches for the best frequencies to keep it strong. Each element has now evolved far beyond its original seed and so now encompasses a much larger definition, allowing for its absorption into the wider society. And so imagine, if you will, each pillar now has its own realm, such so as DJing is now expanded to just music, sound, anything to do with sound, vibrational quality is to do with this pillar. And dance, the break-in, anything to do with movement and body awareness, yoga, mind alignment to the physical realm. It's all linked, and so all of this is represented by these spheres, these circles, circling, rotating, flowing forth from our center. And I hope we can go that bit further within the future and see and empathize with people who may not be into hip-hop or may not associate themselves with hip-hop, but they clearly show and demonstrate qualities of hip-hop. And so I would like to expand this awareness of hip-hop and say that it has always been there. We've just started to hear it. And the biggest influence and most profound aspect of this culture is the fact that it values a person for their character, for what they bring to the game, which is unlike any other form out there. Hip-hop has never asked or judged a person over their colour or creed, their social or economic status, their religious beliefs or heritage. It is free from all this archaic and academic baggage that other aspects of world cultures carry. Its potential is profound, only limited by the imbalances of the individual themselves, which hip-hop ultimately wants to rebalance and harmonise. This brings us nicely to the next aspect of the hip-hop temple, and this is the depiction of the alchemical power of hip-hop. By delving into the culture, you are choosing to creatively and consciously live within oneself and through one's actions. To engage within an active process of becoming, consciously or subconsciously interacting with the internal emotional realm by the elements of air, fire, earth, and water, which all exist and arise from within and throughout the center force, the core element, the ether, symbolized by the circle within the center of our temple. This is the source of all, the fifth element, the first foundation, the first spark, the first expression of all things, above and below. These 5 elements resonate with aspects of your emotional being. You can balance and fine-tune them via inner work and conscious becoming. You can remedy inner and outer issues of health, mind, and body with the processing of such emotionally charged elements. You can also transform your inner and outer reality by finding awareness to your chakra health, external and internal posture, and mind alignment. A culture that actively encourages creative expression undoubtedly puts you in touch with your inner world, with your subtle side. It helps bring balance to your masculine and feminine, and thus your perspective to life. The culture of hip-hop can be your guide, your medicine, your friend, your release, your guardian, your teacher, your home, if you so allow yourself to hear and feel the life force that flows into and through you. And hip-hop gives you the tools to learn this skill, to hint at what lays within, like when you lose but find yourself within a creative flow state, to when you surprise yourself as to what you just accomplished, to when the culture puts you in a situation to where you learn a valuable life lesson, and to where you let go of a restrictive inner tension which allows for expansion of self. And imagine, if you will, the more subtle, hidden side of transformation, such as the changes that could happen on a cellular or biocultural level, internally, when you're in deep connection to such rhythm, frequency, and vibrations. And if you want to dig into this deeper, research the work of Dr. Masaru Emoto and his work on the consciousness of water and the transformative power, intention, and thought alone has upon the structure of water. When you think about it, we are mostly water. Now, a cross is a symbol, a universal symbol of the archetypal human, showing the capable ability of infinite and harmonious expansion on both planes of existence. One is the celestial, spiritual, intellectual, positive, active, and male side, while the other is the earthly, rational, passive, and negative and female side. And don't misunderstand me when I use the terms positive and negative. It is merely a magnetic charge. It is merely a way of attaining balance. And when these are in balance and harmony with each other, then your ability to become or perform or make manifest is that much more profound. And remember, hip-hop does not demand of oneself to look as deeply as I like to, but it does provide the paths if one chooses to. People can be within hip-hop or observe hip-hop however suits them best. Everyone is in need of their own lessons and journey, and so I ask for a space for each individual to be maintained. I just hope to lay some form of foundation for this potential of hip-hop to be discussed, to try and form some sense of collective start point. So I open this forum, this space, within the temple and let the expansion begin. Thank you once again for tuning in. Keep the vibe up. Peace, love, unity, and safely having fun.